Ordinary Time, Week 20, Saturday.
A reading from the book of Ruth. Naomi had a prominent kinsman named Boaz, of the clan of her husband Elimelech. Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, "Let me go and glean ears of grain in the field of anyone who will allow me that favor." Naomi said to her, "Go, my daughter," and she went. The field she entered to glean after the harvesters happened to be the section belonging to Boaz, of the clan of Elimelech. Boaz said to Ruth, "Listen, my daughter, do not go to glean in anyone else's field. You are not to leave here. Stay here with my women servants. Watch to see which field is to be harvested and follow them. I have commanded the young men to do you no harm. When you are thirsty, you may go and drink from the vessels the young men have filled." Casting herself prostrate upon the ground, Ruth said to him, "Why should I, a foreigner, be favored with your notice?" Boaz answered her, "I have had a complete account of what you have done for your mother-in-law after your husband's death. You have left your father and your mother and the land of your birth, and have come to a people whom you did not know previously." Boaz took Ruth. When they came together as man and wife, the Lord enabled her to conceive, and she bore a son. Then the women said to Naomi, "Blessed is the Lord, who has not failed to provide you today with an heir. May he become famous in Israel. He will be your comfort and the support of your old age, for his mother is the daughter-in-law who loves you. She is worth more to you than 7 sons." Naomi took the child, placed him on her lap, and became his nurse. And the neighbor women gave him his name at the news that a grandson had been born to Naomi. They called him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, the father of David. The word of the Lord.
The responsorial psalm. The response is, "See how the Lord blesses those who fear him." Blessed are you who fear the Lord, who walk in his ways. For you shall eat the fruit of your handiwork. Blessed shall you be and favored. See how the Lord blesses those who fear him. Your wife shall be like a fruitful vine in the recesses of your home, your children like olive plants around your table. See how the Lord blesses those who fear him. Behold, thus is the man blessed who fears the Lord. See how the Lord blesses those who fear him. The Lord bless you from Zion. May you see the prosperity of Jerusalem all the days of your life. See how the Lord blesses those who fear him.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Jesus spoke to the crowds and to his disciples, saying, "The scribes and the Pharisees have taken their seat on the chair of Moses. Therefore, do and observe all things whatsoever they tell you, but do not follow their example. For they preach, but they do not practice. They tie up heavy burdens hard to carry and lay them on people's shoulders, but they will not lift a finger to move them. All their works are performed to be seen. They widen their phylacteries and lengthen their tassels. They love places of honor at banquets, seats of honor in synagogues, greetings in marketplaces, and the salutation, Rabbi. As for you, do not be called Rabbi. You have but one teacher, and you are all brothers. Call no one on earth your father. You have but one Father in heaven. Do not be called Master. You have but one Master, the Christ. The greatest among you must be your servant. Whoever exalts himself will be humbled, but whoever humbles himself will be exalted. The Gospel of the Lord.
The first reading comes from Ruth 2, 1-3, 8-11, and chapter 4, verses 13 to 17. Ruth has returned to Bethlehem with Naomi, and one of the things that she can do to earn a living is to glean in the fields. When the Israelites were harvesting the grain, they were told not to look back and catch every last grain. Leave it for the widows and the orphans. Likewise, when they were harvesting grapes or olives, they were to leave a little bit there as a sort of social awareness of the plight of those who are poor. Well, she goes out into the fields of a rich relative, Boaz, and he's very impressed with what she has done to care for her mother-in-law. And so he goes up to her and tells her that she should eat with the men who are working the fields. They will not molest her. Remember, she's a single woman in the fields with men working, and so women at this point would have to worry for their safety. She'll be protected. And in fact, he offers her food and water. The offering of water is significant because in the Old Testament, a man would meet his wife at the well. Now, in this case, instead of the woman offering the man water, he is offering her water because she's a foreigner and it's not her water to give. God rewards her for her generosity. She marries Boaz, and she bears a son who's named Obed, who's the father of Jesse, who will become the father of David. Notice, even though she's a foreigner, a Moabite, a nation that is hated by the Israelites, nevertheless, the Lord will reward her. And in fact, also, Naomi is able to celebrate because she was barren. She had lost her husband, she had lost her 2 sons. And now the next of kin, who in Hebrew is called the Goel, that person who will take your part when no one else will. Boaz serves as the next of kin, and he bears a child who will bear the name of the deceased. Remember, in Israel, you were named David, the son of Jesse, the son of Obed, etc. Your memory in Israel was passed down by your descendants, and therefore Naomi and her deceased son will have an inheritance in Israel. The Gospel comes from Matthew 23, 1-12. Jesus tells his listeners that they should listen to the Pharisees and what they say to interpret the law. Remember, the Pharisees are trying to build a fence around the law, interpreting the law to its widest possible interpretation. Jesus accepts that, but he doesn't accept the way that they act, that they interpret the law but they don't live it. And in fact, they're out for show. They lengthen their tassels, they widen their phylacteries. Phylacteries are those little boxes that were used to contain a little bit of the law of Israel. They were tied to one's forehead and one's wrist when one prayed. The idea being forehead, a sign of thought, wrist, a sign of action. Our thoughts and actions should be guided by the law. Well, they make them ornate just so everyone can see and say what good Jews they are. Tassels were strings running from their underwear, which were a remembrance of who they were. They would see them hanging out of their clothes and always remember that they're Jews and they should live like Jews. Jesus talks against this attempt to seek privilege, to seek honor among the people. And he says you shouldn't be called rabbi, you shouldn't be called teacher, you shouldn't be called father. One alone is those things, God himself. We should be guided by God and not let these other people aggrandize themselves, draw honors to themselves. Now, the one difficulty we have, you shall not be called father. Unfortunately, that's the title we use for priests nowadays, and they probably should have chosen a better title. But this idea that that's absolutely forbidden is a bit exaggerated, because remember, Jewish people talked in exaggeration. When Jesus says don't call anyone father, he certainly didn't mean that we shouldn't call our biological dad father. When the census form is sent around and they have the squares that says name your father, we don't write God eternal. So likewise, we should realize that when Jesus says don't call anyone father, he's not saying that you can never call anyone father, but rather that God should be our guide, God should be our everything, and everybody else is secondary. And may God bless us.